Absolutely. Yeah, hit the button, Brian.
All right, we're good.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in at whatever time it is for you. Um, what we're talking about this morning is this conversation around the World Urban Forum 10 and how, as a group of Christians and more broadly as an interfaith movement, we can connect meaningfully in with a global process. And we're very excited to be part of this global process. Chris will tell you more about that in a moment, and the connections that he's had and how we actually are in this conversation. But I'd love to hear from you first, just by way of introduction. I think we mostly know each other, but it would be good just to do a brief intro. So just your name, where you're from, what you're involved in, really, really briefly. And what interests you around this conversation of flourishing cities and the importance of being connected with this sort of broader UN conversation. Brian, would you mind kicking us off, and then others can pick up?
Yeah, sure. I'm Brian McCabe. I think I recognize many on this Zoom. And I've been involved with the leadership team with the Urban Shalom Society ever since. I'm a pastor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, here in the U.S., and I do a lot of urban ministry hands-on work here, but I became really interested in what was happening at the systemic level upstream that I could do to be a part of just resolving a lot of the challenges that I was facing in the city. So that led me to show up in Quito for the Habitat 3 and the Urban Shalom Forum that we had there, and just been really excited to work with this crew since then to try to get more Christian leaders and interfaith leaders together to see what the best thinking is and the best practitioner work and everything that's happening to address these systemic challenges through the UN and elsewhere. So I'm a pastor, as I mentioned. I'm also the chief academic officer at Baki Graduate University, where I get the chance to work with leaders all over the world, which is a lot of fun. So,
awesome.
That's me.
Thanks, Brian. Someone else just want to jump in? Tell us a little bit.
Sure, I can go.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight.
My name is Dwight Friesen, and I'm currently a professor of practical theology at the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology. I also am actively involved with an organization called Parish Collective, and that's kind of my introduction to the Urban Shalom Society and the World Urban Forum came to be. As a theologian focused on the local church, the recovery of parish as the natural building block for the city has been the focus of my work, trying to figure out how does a church within its neighborhood link within and beyond its own parish or its own neighborhood for the sake of the flourishing of the city and the entire ecosystem of their watershed. And so that's kind of the primary work that I try to do, and been thoroughly loving my experience with Urban Shalom Society thus far. So,
excellent. Thanks, Dwight. Ian, do you want to jump in and share a little bit?
Thank you. I'm Ian Makeda. I lead a local church in Singapore, but I've been involved with a ministry team internationally called New Covenant Ministries International. So it's an apostolic prophetic team that has been involved in planting churches and training leaders in, I think, about 90 nations or something collectively. And I've also been involved more recently with, back in South Africa, where I come from, with something that we call Engage. So we've done Engage Johannesburg, and that was getting people from .com.gov.org, so people from commerce, government, and organizations, church and other, to sit together at a round table and brainstorm ideas and solutions that come from a Christian perspective to solve some of the challenges that Johannesburg and therefore South Africa face. And that's been incredibly encouraging and has led to a couple of connections with other cities. Auckland is interested in doing something right now, Auckland, New Zealand. And Yeah, my passion is that we just take our theology, because it arose from a theology for me, and make it practical and broader, and we don't just wait for the rapture or for heaven, but we do something while we still have breath.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And I've got to Andrea. No, you can't hear us. No, she's got a problem with her computer, so you'll have to tune in later. And we've got David there. Can you hear us? David Coop. Oh, very dodgy connection. Okay, so a little intro by chat. Oh, you can all see that, hopefully. Oh, beautiful. Okay, welcome, David. Great to have you with us. Thank you for that brief introduction. Beautiful. All I'll do is I'll just briefly intro, and then I'll throw to Chris, and he can just do an intro for himself, and then dive into what we're talking about. So my name's Andre Van Emeren. I've been interested in this city conversation for a long time now, but my background is connected into grassroots community development, faith-based community development, and so working alongside local services, churches, not-for-profits, councils, this sort of thing, and saying, how can we work together to best build our communities and our neighbourhoods? And so I resonate very much with the Parish Collective, and also began asking questions around city, and began seeing that the city is connected to the neighbourhood, and began asking, okay, if we want a neighbourhood to flourish, we do need to understand what's going on in the broader city, and so that's led me into my PhD work now, and led me to Quito in 2016, where this whole journey kicked off. I mean, it was going for each of us in different ways, but it's a really galvanizing time for us to be at Habitat 3, and that's been a big connection then into the World Urban Forums. And so I currently head up the Centre for Building Better Community in Melbourne, and co-direct with Chris the Urban Shalom Society. So very excited that we could all connect together for this conversation. So thank you. And I'll throw to Chris to introduce himself and then lead us up on our conversation this morning.
Hey, thanks, Andre. It's great to be here. I am sitting in Southern California, San Diego, little mountain town of Julian. That's where I live and have my being, as it were. And I direct the World Evangelical Alliance Creation Care Task Force. And the Creation Care Task Force focuses on all the things you would think of when you think of creation care from a Christian perspective. But one of the things I also focus on is on cities, because I know that the most important place that people's lives intersect with creation care in their watershed will be the place that they live. And if we can make our cities more sustainable, then we're doing there's multiple benefits to that for people, for communities, for creation. So cities are vital, and the Creation Care Task Force, the WEA, helps to convene and help the church to understand the role of cities in people's lives. So that's who I am, and as Andre said, help direct the Urban Shalom Society. And I think just want to go over the kind of background for this webinar and kind of what we're going to try to do. What we're going to try to do essentially is be practical, and the practical thing we want to do is help you think through and then apply for a side event at the World Urban Forum. And you know, when I've been going to World UN and Habitat events for several years now, started going 3 years before Habitat 3, because Habitat 3 is a global conversation and it requires a 3-year path of conversation that required PrepComs, they call them. So PrepCom, Habitat 3, and then World Urban Forum number 9 in Kuala Lumpur. Well, I can say that at the beginning of my experience, we were the only faith-based organization that turned up. And this is in 2014 or so. And as we've been going forward, more and more Christians, more and more faith folks are turning up, and we just want to see more and more folks be in the conversation, because when we're not in the conversation, it's not a full conversation. We have something to offer in the conversation. We have our communities who have things to offer, and if we're not there, we're just absent. So hopefully, you're here because you're thinking about, going to WUF 10, and you're here because you're thinking about, maybe I could apply for what they call a side event or a networking event. And there's some couple other things as well that you could look at. So hopefully at the end of this time, we've got about an hour. We're just going to be able to say, hey, taking the mystery out of how to apply it and get this thing done. So if you haven't been to the website, I'm going to start to share my screen now. And WUF 10 website should be what you see when you go to, okay, so you can see my screen, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's good, Chris.
Yeah.
Great. So that's the WUF 10 website. WUF, the World Urban Forum, obviously there's been 9 beforehand, and this is the 10th one. And this is run by the UN agency responsible for urban or human settlements, which is UN Habitat. Now, UN Habitat itself is going through a transition stage after Habitat 3. Habitat 3s, or habitats, are events that happen every 20 years. And the way to think about those is it's a global conversation that kind of produces a global footprint, a global blueprint for the next 20 years. So Habitat 4 will be basically 18 years from now. And so we're post-Habitat 3, and UN Habitat went through and is going through an evaluation and a revitalization, and it actually looks very different as an organization to what it was when Habitat 3 happened, and even when WUF 9 happened, which was in Kuala Lumpur 2 years ago. It's still on this process. So when you come to Habitat 10, and as you contribute a side event or a networking event or a training event, we're actually contributing to a transformation of this UN body. So it's a really opportune time to be in the conversation, to get there, and to be involved. It's just ended a current 5-year plan, strategic plan. And so the new strategic plan for Habitat going forward starts next year. And so that is all going to be kind of a part of the conversation, this new strategic plan. It has a new executive director. It has a bunch of new things that are happening. So we're at an opportune time to come along and be involved. Does anybody have any questions? I'll pause just to maybe do a little bit more, if you have some more questions on the background, the opportunity, and then I'll just try to jump into looking at the website a little bit more and jumping into the side events, how you apply. Any questions or comments? Okay.
No.
We'll just keep going on then.
Thank you.
Are you able to hear me now? This is David here.
Yeah, we can hear you. Hey, David.
Excellent. Just a quick question. I was involved with WUF, back 100 years ago.
Okay.
And there was in the initial, I think I was at 2, 3, and 4. And initially there seemed to be really robust engagement with a number of faith-based international NGOs. So back in the day when I worked with World Vision International, for example, we collaborated with Habitat for Humanity and a few others to put on side events and also to, show our wares in the exhibition and so on. Is that still happening these days, the international faith-based NGO engagement?
Yes, to some degree, there is. I mean, the face of those international NGOs is a forward face that is about urban, and its faith dimensions are not as prominent. So I think the difference between this conversation is we're faith forward, and we do have conversations and have relationships with Habitat for Humanity, for example. World Vision is another story. Its involvement has dwindled over the last several years. So it has a real small footprint at the last WUF. I had one person that came, no booth, nothing like that. As opposed to Habitat for Humanity, for example, had a booth. It was engaging. But again, not faith forward as we are proposing and engaging with UN Habitat. Does that make sense?
That's really helpful. I guess I'm thinking back to another era when people like Michael Mata and myself, would do things there, I guess, from a more explicitly faith-based angle. Yeah.
It's different now, and I think that's what we're trying to bring into the conversation and bring in as in relationships and partners. If you look at, for example, the World Urban Campaign, which is the civil society arm of UN Habitat, you'll see, the partners. There are Habitat for Humanity is a partner. There's many other partners. Some have faith background, but the World Evangelical Alliance is the only faith explicit partner within the World Urban Campaign. So,
when you say it's the only one, is that only Christian one or only faith-based organization?
It's the only explicit faith-based forward organization that's a partner of the World Urban Campaign.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there may be other faith-based NGOs that are involved, but not explicitly from their faith perspective. If that makes sense, they're there working as Muslim aid agencies or something like that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So coming back to WUF, the key thing about WUF is to understand and be successful, to have your proposal accepted, you have to know what they're on about. And so if you look at the website here, you see you have to register. And if you register, you then can apply to attend WUF, and it doesn't cost anything. So that's a good thing. You have to only pay your own expenses, but you have to register by a particular date. I don't know what the date is. I think it's actually I think it might be a deadline in January. So there's plenty of time to register. But to apply for a side event, a training event, or any of these things that we're going to be talking about, you need to register, because you'll have to sign on and go through the process online. So you need to register. And so do that. And let's just go to the side event. Now, a training event, I'm just going to talk about a side event, this middle one right here. The side event is a 1-hour event convening people for a conversation. And a networking event is basically a 2-hour block of time focused on networking, bringing people in to network around a particular issue, around a particular subject, and that type of stuff. Broaden your network. So it's a networking event, 2 hours. A training event, you actually host a training, and there is a bit more involved in the application for a training event. We may do a training event webinar later, but right now I'm just going to do a side event. The side event conversation that we're going to have right now also kind of applies to the networking event. So side event, networking event, kind of the same. The difference is, as I mentioned, the side event is also normally a lunch hour time period, right? So it's a 1 hour lunchtime time period, get people in. So I'm going to click down that, and you'll see an introduction to the side events. Now, the key thing here is to make sure that you understand what WUF is all about, and that's described in the concept paper, that first button there. So I believe I have that concept paper on my, here is the concept paper for WUF 10. And you'll need to know this in and out so that you can apply for your event.
It hasn't come up on the screen yet, Chris.
Hasn't come up on the screen yet? Okay. It's on my screen. Can't see it yet?
No. Might have to go stop.
I'm going to do something different. I'm just going to go
right
stop
here. Sharing and then
new share. Hold on.
New share. Yeah.
Try that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to this.
I see it now.
See it now? Okay, so this is the concept paper.
Okay. Okay, so it gives a bit of background, and then it talks about what the objectives are for this forum.
Yep, that's the general objectives, and then it digs down even further. So there is 8, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure that you're pin perfect on this as the basis for your application. Pick one of these.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You don't have to cover all 8 of them.
No, you're just picking one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the sharper it is, the better.
Okay.
Okay. And if you'll notice, this year there's a lot about culture, the culture of cities. And culture is mentioned in a variety of these different objectives, and also in the dialogues. So the dialogues are events that happen at WUF 10 too, but you see culture is in dialogue 1, dialogue 2, dialogue 6, and I think one of our entrees into this is, we're faith. We're a part of culture that needs to be considered. Our institutions, our communities, our activities, we are part of city culture. We should be at the table. And then what do we bring? That's what you have to focus in on. And so, go there. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just a question on that. Do you know, in your conversations with folks in and around the organizations, what's driving the culture emphasis? Is it, my working first assumption was something like the rise of nationalism that we're seeing across the world, and a question of culture around that kind of thing. But do you have any insight on what's driving the culture emphasis?
I don't. It is not new. I think it's been there for quite some time.
Okay.
Being inclusive, making cities prosperous for all involved, inclusive in the city, and so on and so forth. I think it's just being emphasized more sharply, and I think it's in here because I think they're problematizing culture. I think they want to know a bit more about the culture aspect. So it's in here because they want more robust understanding of it. They want us to talk about it. So I think that's probably why that's in there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's nicely, it's sharpened quite nicely. So you need to go through this document. Okay.
So, Chris, what's the connection between the themes that we just looked at and then these dialogues? Do we need to fit into one of those dialogues, or what's the process there?
No. So the dialogues are another set of events that happen at WUF 10.
Okay.
Right? So this is the whole concept document for the entire WUF 10.
Sure.
So so they're going to talk about dialogues as a part of WUF 10 coming out of these objectives. So the dialogues are going to talk to these objectives.
Okay.
The other stuff's going to talk to these objectives, like the roundtables are going to talk to these objectives. Special sessions are going to talk to these objectives. And your networking event's going to talk to those objectives. Your side event's going to talk to these objectives as well.
Okay.
They're going to be a part of the whole program. That's why this concept document is really important. You can't propose an outlier to these objectives.
No.
It's going to fit within all this type of stuff. And they're going to put the program together.
Okay.
Assemblies and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So get your head around the concept document. That's the first thing you got to do.
It also, if you look at the concept document as you're just saying, it also helps you see where you can plug into other events and things as well, doesn't it? Because there were a whole bunch of different things like women's assemblies and, and those sort of things. So we might say, okay, as well as putting on our side event, there's a bunch of things that we want to plug into. And if we can do that in a coordinated way, that will give us a lot of exposure, but also learn a lot from what's happening.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly right. So here is the selection criteria for a side event. That's the second button. So those 5 points here, thematic year link, that's in the concept paper, relevance to the theme. Now you have to, when you propose an event, basically you're saying you're the organizer. So you will bring in other partners. I'll talk about this later, but essentially you're making the proposal. You organize the partners and the speakers, and they want to have multiple speakers. They want to have multiple partners. They're not just going to give an approval for your organization and for you to speak. It's got to be broader than that. But you're making the proposal, and you're responsible for it, making it happen. And the other thing that I'll add here, at point number 3 here, applying results-based management approach to the event. In other words, they want to see, and this is a change at UN Habitat, they want to see that what you're proposing, you can, and you're making recommendations, that those recommendations are also going to be tracked somehow, and evaluated somehow, and that feedback loop can be kind of put back into either the partners that are involved in the project, or even better, that you can bring results back to UN Habitat, and it can become a part of their working base of knowledge. So you're trying to say, hey, I got a side event, I got these partners, we got this cool stuff, we think it's going to produce these outcomes, and we're going to track those outcomes, and we're going to, work with those outcomes to improve what we're doing, and we're going to feed that information back to our partners and back to UN Habitat. UN Habitat is moving away from just being like, hey, we're thought leaders, we're giving you ideas, and that's the end of it. They're actually starting to become more results-based as an organization. So we need to kind of move with that.
Yeah, I sensed the shift, Chris, post Habitat 3, that it became very much about, I mean, this is even true for the Urban Thinkers campuses, very much about exactly what you're saying, that process of implementation. How do we actually take these ideas and see them outwork on the ground? And that seems to be a key focus for you in Habitat. Do you agree? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a shift. You'll see that,
Yeah.
when they roll out the strategic plan, you will see the results-based management dimension to the strategic plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not overly rationalized to the point that, all the innovate is totally squeezed into management first.
Sure. Sure.
It's not squeezed to that point, but it's now a valid and important part of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So go through the selection criteria, and I just highlighted, one thing I wanted to point out, but everything on there is critical. Okay, now I want to go through the application form, because the application form gets down to some of the details that you need to pay attention to.
Oh, note this date here as well.
Yeah.
14th October 2019. That's our deadline.
Deadline, right. Note that date. I'm trying to think if they've ever extended a deadline. I don't think they have. So just to give you like last year, 2 years ago at WUF 9, there was 23,000 people. So it's a lot of people. They're also giving only one event per organization. So,
okay. I didn't realize that.
Let's say this. The WEA, we could apply for one networking event, one side event. But, Baki could apply for one, and so on and so forth. And we may be able to share panelists, or we can share speakers and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Because we probably have within this room more ideas and more things than obviously just one per organization. So a part of this conversation is also about, sharing and collaborating together to get our stuff that we want to get out. And one of the constraints is every organization just has one opportunity for one thing. Now, I will say we could apply for multiple things as an organization, and it's probably a strategy to say, I want to apply for 2 side events because both are really important, but I'm only going to get one. But, if I only apply for one, I might not get one. So I think I'm going to apply for 2 side events, and hopefully I'll get one of those 2. So there's some strategy that needs to be thought through here. And the other part of the strategy is, applying for multiple events from one organization, but then partnering with other organizations. But I'll get to that in a little bit later when we go through the application form. So October 14th.
Yeah.
And then communication deadline. Now, notice the communication deadline. You will know by November. You will start to get notified by November 4th whether you have been accepted or not. Now
I'm smiling about that one, Chris.
Tell the story, Andre.
Well, we did have a bit of a mix-up with WUF 9. So we had applied for a bunch through Urban Shalom and connected with our other organisations that we're all a part of. And they missed their own communication deadline. I think they're a little bit more organised now, but sort of coming in that period, a couple of years ago, they were really in quite a bit of disarray. And we got, I forget the way that it went. That's right. We first got a letter saying we hadn't been accepted. Then we got a letter saying we had been accepted and that our events would go forward. And then we had no follow-up. And so we missed. So we'd actually been accepted. But they then missed out giving us all the details and that sort of stuff. And by the time we got connected with them, it was just all too late. So we're hoping that they're more organised this time and that we get everything going. They were apologetic, but we did miss out. But the positive thing in all of that was to know that we were hitting the mark. And we did actually hit the mark. Right. And we could have been a part of it if there wasn't the clerical errors and all of that sort of thing. So that was quite encouraging. Right. But it was a stuff up, and they acknowledged that.
Yeah. So here's the process happens. So we make the application by October 14. They will start communicating to us. Mm-hmm. You've been accepted. Then the next stage is you then have to say, confirm that you're going to do what you applied to do. This is the problem that we had last time.
Yep.
Because we didn't get the message that we had been approved.
That's
so
right.
We didn't confirm.
That's right.
Because they didn't get a confirmation, they just went on without us.
Yes.
So that's the problem. So the process is application, acceptance, confirmation, and then you implement it.
Yep. Cool.
And so that's how it goes. So let's just go through the application process. So here's the application process.
So you apply online.
Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is why you have to register, because now I'm in because I registered.
Mm-hmm.
I need personal details. It's already in there because that's part of what you do when you register. Now you have to figure out what kind of organization you are. We're a civil society organization.
Most of us would be in that space, I'd say.
Yep.
Yep. Maybe academia research.
There's academia and research. Yep. So you go in there.
So Chris, when you do this, are you applying as WEA or will you apply as Urban Shalom for you? What will you do?
Okay, so you'll see as the application goes down, there's a benefit as they kind of evaluate applications. If you have a relationship with UN Habitat right now, it helps your application to be accepted. Now, because the WEA is a member of the World Urban Forum, or a partner, that's going to help us get seen and more readily accepted. So I think the way to do this is that when you get to your partners down here, I'll come back. You could apply with your organization, or the Urban Shalom Society, and then one of the partners can be the WEA. And when they see that the WEA is a partner in the proposal, then that's going to help the proposal go through.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So I think I will apply as WEA because that gives me the highest opportunity for acceptance. And I think then you apply as Urban Shalom Society and then make WEA a partner in the proposal.
I mean, for others, feel free to use your own organization and then put WEA as a partner.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. Now, that does not mean that that I am going to be the person on your panel. It can be Dwight Friesen can be on a panel, but he can come under my name, last name, and the organization can be, for this particular purposes, WEA.
WEA. Yeah.
And anybody else that you want to, we can make that work. So does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. Now, I already registered, but I registered under or as a part of Urban Shalom Society. So that sounds like that's okay then, huh?
That's good. Yep.
Yep. That's fine.
That's great. Yep.
You can still say that you're connected to WEA. That's no problem because WEA in itself is a huge network. So
sure.
Yeah.
Would that be right, Chris?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So event details. Obviously, describe your event. We've gone over that already. Provide a summary. These are not
you can see the word limits there are actually quite tight. So you have to be pretty to point in what you're saying.
Yep. Absolutely. And then again, here's the themes.
Oh,
Those are dialogue
I see.
themes,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And click one of those, no more than 2.
Yep.
And then there's more questions. Now, some of the questions are about your event, why you're proposing it, so on and so forth. But they do want to know about how you promote the event. So give that some thought. When I do these applications, I say, we're going to promote the event through WEA, media channels and our partners. And I mention, our website, our Facebook page, our Instagram page. I would also say now a little bit of a communication strategy. Again, they want to say, if you can say, I'm going to write an editorial or submit an editorial to this magazine, or I'm going to write a column in this magazine or whatever, I mean, that also helps. So give some thought through, your promotional strategy and communication strategy around your event, because they want to know that you're going to be able to reach people, not just the people that are on the panel hosting the event, but you want to be able to reach people that are coming to Habitat, coming to WUF 10 to be in the session. How are we going to reach? This is all about how are we going to reach people that are the 23,000 people coming to the session. And you can say, we are, the Urban Shalom Society is convening, people to come. I mean, I think we're probably realistically going to have in the vicinity of a couple hundred people. I mean, already we have a group that's coming that has, 40 people coming. They've already got their hotels and all that type of stuff. They're doing pre-day events. So I think that 40 to 50 people, that's already. And as the word gets out, I mean, I think we're going to get more and more people. So I think you can say within our network, we're going to bring several hundred people to WUF 10, and we'll reach those throughout the communication channels and then add some other stuff as well. Next section here is about your monitoring strategy, which I just mentioned. Think through that, how you're going to monitor, how you're going to get that monitor and feedback is what that, and follow up, okay? So that's that important thing. So are there organizations directly involved in the event? You click yes, because that's the World Evangelical Alliance. Actually, I don't know if I do that, yeah, then you have to specify the name. And you can say World Evangelical Alliance. And you can say, if you wanted to, you can say this. No, WEA. So WEA, World Evangelical, that's World Urban Campaign Lead Partner. And that's who we are within UN Habitat. Now here's where you're gonna make it or break it. You need to have diversity and breadth. So as they mentioned, you should include youth, a youth leader, somebody that's young, a young leader. I don't know what that means by this. That could be 18 to 30. I don't know. 18 to 25. I have no idea. Youth and gender. If you just roll up with just,
old white men,
it ain't going to happen. So think about that. And you want to have multiple participants as speakers. So no more than 5, but if you hit 3, you hit 4. And the reason what they want is they want as many speakers as they possibly can and share the stage. You're not going to give it just to as many people as possibly can. So you know the routine there. So enlist organizations you want multiple speakers from multiple organizations. And those organizations, if they can be secular, if they can be governmental, if they can be youth, if they can be even another faith leader, the more diversity that they can see around this event that you're planning, the better off you are. Any questions about that?
Chris, do you have access to the list of WEA and Urban Shalom Society attendees so that we have a sense of what potential speakers or collaborators we might be able to draw on, like in terms of like friendly folks that we can already connect with?
No, we don't. But that is a good organizing thing we can start to work on. It's a part of why we're doing this webinar, so we can start to organize ourselves exactly on the lines you're describing.
Okay.
So I think we can put that up. We can ask, who's going. We can get, what is your expertise, what organization. We can just get something like that and say for the purpose of organizing ourselves for attending and to apply for side events and networking events.
It would be interesting for you to send out an email to all of the interfaith participants who were with us. Where was that? Was that Singapore?
Yeah.
Singapore, yeah.
Whichever one was, that was the interfaith one anyway. And invite some kind of collaboration with some of those folks so that we could have a more diverse and religiously expansive conversation.
Sure.
Because I'm sure some of those people have got to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, that's a really good idea, Dwight. Chris Ives' academic network with Grace, because they had a bunch of people from different faiths, so there could be a bunch of collaborators there as well.
Okay. Is there someone who has the easiest access to making that happen?
I will have a chat with Fiona around how we put that sort of stuff together and how we get it out to everyone. Yeah.
Sweet. That'd be awesome. Thanks, Andre.
That's all right.
Yeah. This is, we can have, these side events, and they can have some breadth to them. We can have, like I just said, different sectors, public, private, other faiths, and that type of stuff. That's for this. We can have our own internal conversations as well, which we are going to have, for the faith community, for ecumenical conversation. So
yeah, for the Christian community. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to have involved in multiple levels of conversation with multiple constituencies. So I just want to make sure, that I say that because this is probably going to go online, and I want to make sure that people realize the breadth of conversation we're convening. That makes sense. Okay, so they want to know what kind of language it is. These are the UN languages. Obviously, we can do English, or we could do French, or we could do Spanish.
There might be Spanish. Yeah, there might be.
We've got Spanish leaders. There's other folks that speak different languages. There may be translation. There may not be. So don't rely on translation. But it'd be great to have our Spanish leaders run us, just totally in Spanish for the Spanish community.
Absolutely.
We don't have, just run it in the language that you have. So if there's translation, that's a bonus.
They ask if you require interpretation, so you can put that there.
Yeah, and I don't.
Go ahead. Andre, as you have thought about the future of Urban Shalom Society and some of the things that we want to be about, are there specifically thematic side events that you would like us to strategically be kind of thinking about in your own, or that have already been percolating for you?
Yeah, look, I should circulate around what we put up for WUF 9, and I think some of that could be helpful to take some ideas. I mean, I think going forward, it really is our hub. So we've got a list of around 12 hubs that, of course, aren't particularly active at the moment, but they're the ones that we want to generate conversation in. So that is like urban design, community development, smart cities, healthy cities, governance, the academia in the city, those kinds of things. There's a list of 12. So I think thematically, that's what we'd like to develop. So if there was something that matched between your thinking, the themes of WUF 10, and those kinds of thematic areas that we've been looking to explore. So you remember at the summit last year, Dwight, we took about 6 of those, and we looked a bit more in depth at those. Arts and culture was another one, and we went a bit deeper. So I think they're kinds of the guiding things for us as an organisation. The other thing to think about from the Urban Shalom perspective is that we want to see city networks established. So we want people who are working in neighbourhoods to connect with other neighbourhoods, and to begin to explore what's going on in the city, what are the city issues, and how, as people of faith, can we connect into conversations and actions around being solution focused on those issues. So say if it's homelessness, for example, which is a growing one in cities globally, then who else in our networks are working on homelessness, and how do we draw people together for a more holistic conversation and a cross-sector conversation? Now that's one of the things, even though we've got our hubs, if there's stuff that can be cross-sector, that's something that we want to bring into these conversations as well.
David here, I'm just really interested, Andre, too, whether you would have any sort of evaluative comments on what worked well in some of those sessions. I'm thinking, there's the possibility of combining the question of faith and a sector, or faith and a topic. And I'd love to hear, had any sort of evaluative reflections on how and where that worked best and why. Just as you look back at, say, WUF 9 or at Habitat.
So in WUF 9, for example, we didn't get up. So unfortunately, we didn't get to sort of test any of that. And Habitat, we were just forming. So we're sort of new. But what we have seen, we've been running Urban Shalom forums and faith-based urban thinkers campuses in different parts of the world. So our first one was in Singapore in 2017, and then Grace and I think Andrea was involved as well in Latin America, in Costa Rica, just at the beginning of August. And so there, where we're beginning to see some traction around the sorts of things that you're talking about, David. And I've got my UTC here in Melbourne coming up on the 23rd and 24th of September, which, Ian, I want to note you for your Auckland connections. So look, it's early days in terms of what has gained traction. But I think what you're saying is right, David. We are looking at what faith has to say to the topic. And for the purposes of, WUF 10, we're not just looking at the Christian faith. If we've got connections broader into other faiths and the topic, that would be really good. So here in Melbourne, for example, we've done a lot of work. We're just beginning to do, more work with the Islamic Council of Victoria. And they've got a whole bunch of social services that they're running. And so they're saying, are there things that we could plug in and help with? And provide some expertise, because they feel like they're just, kicking off on things. So are these their points of collaboration, around some of this? And so that then leads to the possibility of a more cohesive, more holistic response to the issues, picking up on the nuances of different faiths and different cultures within a city.
Just to add to that, Andre, David, one of the things that really stood out to me, this is Dwight, from the Singapore interfaith conversation, was the realization that the City We Need document that was created was a largely a secular document, for lack of a better term. And that part of what was put forward from the interfaith dialogue was just how vital it was to, if we want to see our cities become more sustainable, healthy places, to mobilize the world's populations and our cities through our faith traditions and faith narratives. And I thought for me that was a really compelling emergence from the conversation. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it's good.
That's really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, Chris.
I'm just conscious of time. We just, gone a minute over the hour. So I don't want to take more time on this, but I wanted to say that hopefully the practical stuff I just went through was helpful. And now we're in the mode of like, okay, what do we want to say? Who wants to be, in the conversation about what we want to say? And I think we should, as a Shalom Society, try to, put some tools up there to facilitate that, where people can find themes of conversations. We can go back to our broad themes, but then try to help folks like David connect with Dwight, and Andrea connect with, other folks that are talking about, issues that, she's concerned with, which are really vital and important, and try to facilitate that so that we can put together some really solid slate of proposals. Here's what I would like to see happen. The vision would be this, is that we actually have 15, 16, 20 side events and, 10, 15 networking events. And they can actually be put together into a program that if we get, hopefully within UN Habitat, a faith-based program, that's it. Formally, officially, but if they don't kind of connect the dots for people, then we can connect the dots, and we can put our own informal faith-based program together, because we have 10, 20 proposals that we've kind of put together and that make sense and coherent on different topics and and so on. So I think if we put together a framework, facilitate the conversation, get people making proposals, and then I think we have something. Long term, we're going to continue to prove to UN Habitat that we've got something to contribute. And if we get 20, 30 proposals, that says something. And then next year, in 2 years' time, maybe we will have that formal religious-based programming at WUF 11.
And just, I want to just emphasize, please be thinking interfaith. Please be thinking multi-faith. Because if you come at it just from a Christian angle, it won't be so appealing to, to UN Habitat and that sort of thing. We've got to be inclusive. We've got to be open to other connections and other voices.
And I would add to that, Andre, we're planning to have an Urban Shalom Forum for Christian leaders who are going to be at the event the day before the World Urban Forum starts.
Oh, so that's what I was curious about.
Yes, yeah, so we'll have an event for us where we'll probably have a call for papers or something, or some things associated with that. But and then we'll have lots of, as Chris was saying earlier, we'll have lots of side huddling and lots of connection throughout the course of the time there. But for these proposals that Chris and Andre are emphasizing today, we'll do our best. Keep them.
On a similar kind of note, are people planning to stay, like our Urban Shalom Society, are you guys booking hotels at the same place or lodging in the same place?
I think it would be helpful if we could. I haven't looked into that yet. Chris, do you have any sense?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I've looked at all the hotels and things like that. The closest hotels, there's 2 hotels at the convention center. Actually, there's 2 hotels at the convention center, and then a few not far walking distance from it. But the ones that are in the hotel convention center, they're kind of, they're not expensive, but there's hooks to them. So right now, I haven't booked my hotel because I need to call them and say, it's telling me that I have to pay now. So
right, okay.
I have to book now, pay now, and no refund if I change my dates or something happens.
Oh, wow.
So that's a problem that with these hotels on the convention center. But I'm going to call them and just make sure that is correct information that's on the website. So we don't have a hotel book, a hotel block. We'll leave it to people to find their own hotels.
I mean, I think if there could be something, like if there was a sense of being able to stay in the same place, that makes it easier for sort of breakfast conversations and later night conversations and that sort of thing. So we've got Joel and Fiona who are based in the Middle East. I will be talking with them on Monday. Let me sort of put out some feelers and see whether there is a space that we might all be able to stay in together, even if it's a church, accommodation or a college accommodation or something like that. And otherwise we can look at if there's a hotel we can all book into or something, because I think if we could coordinate something like that, it will make it a bit easier for us.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that it's best to have accommodation at the site.
Right.
So that you just walk from your hotel right into the event and vice versa, and have all the meetings and stuff. I mean, it's right there. And then, like I say, there's 2 Hilton hotels, Andaz and another Hilton hotel. But this is the problem I've run into. And then there is one that's just across the street. So so
there's a few nearby.
There's a few nearby. You want it to definitely be walking distance.
Yeah. So just so I can be clear, the event itself is February 8th through the 13th. And Brian, are you saying that we're planning an event on the 7th?
Yes.
I think you're close. I thought it was actually the 7th through the 13th, and our event would be on the 6th, but I could be getting my...
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Brian's right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we actually start on our event is on the 6th.
Yep.
Well, WUF itself starts on the 8th.
Oh, okay, so maybe I was off.
Oh, okay.
I think we're going to go 6 and 7.
Yeah, I think so.
We're going to go 6 and 7, and then starts on the 8th.
Oh, so we're doing a 2-day thing.
Yeah, I think that'd be better.
Yeah, kind of like people drive in. So start on that evening, and then do all stuff on the 6th in the evening, and do the 7th, and then go straight into WUF.
Okay.
And Dwight, if you're on the fence, it sounds like you're confident about going, but I mean, I know Andre and Chris and I are all dedicated to getting there. And
Absolutely.
Then I believe Grace and Michael do we have confirmations from them? Do you guys know? But
I haven't heard definitely, but okay. I'm presuming, but that is always dangerous, but yeah.
I'm pretty confident I'll be there. I think I'd accidentally hit first class tickets when I was getting prices. So my prices were coming up with like $7,000 to $8,000. And then when I went back and looked again, it's like, oh no, this is doable.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, it's so good to hear that.
I'm like 90% there. So I mean, it would be just like if something happened, that would be like right now. I'm 100% planning on it.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Cool.
It'll be great to have you there, Dwight.
Yeah, definitely.
It would be good to firm up the dates. I'm just looking at the actual program, the draft program from WUF, and the opening of the 10th session is actually on Sunday morning, the 9th. So the previous day, the 8th, is a series of assemblies, the Youth Assembly, Gender and Business Assembly.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
we could meet them.
Formal opening is on Sunday morning. So yeah, it'd be good to know exactly when we would gather.
Well, it seems like we would use that caucus day to gather then for ourselves, and use the 8th for us, and then maybe go 7-8 instead of 6-7.
7-8's fine for me. Yeah.
7-8's fine. Yep.
Thanks for checking that. That's good.
Yeah, and the 13th is the Thursday, and that's actually more or less just the closing ceremony.
Well, I think we might be able to duck into that, but also I think then if there was if we came together on that day on the 13th, we could have a bit of a debrief and a what's next kind of space on the 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really four core days, Sunday through Wednesday, the 9th through the 12th.
Okay.
That's great.
Thanks, David. That's good.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So, David, do you think you'd be heading over? Does that sound like something you can commit to, or?
Yeah, I just need to check with the college, and I'm on sabbatical in that space, so I just have to make sure it fits in.
Okay, cool. It'd be great to have you there. Great to connect with you. Yeah.
Ian, how about you? Are you considering? I know you're trying to wrap up, Chris. So sorry.
Yeah. I've been invited to minister in Abu Dhabi in January, and I've pushed that to February to coincide with this time. So it works pretty well for me. I can be there.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great. Good.
So just to ask Fiona and Joel, you say they're both based in
not in Abu Dhabi, but they're in Jordan. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
And Andre, I don't know if you can hear if you have audio, but do you think you're going to be able to make it?
Still on the call, or did she jump off?
No, she's right there.
Yeah.
You might just have to put it in the chat box for her.
Type it in.
Okay, I don't have access to it, so.
Andre will type it in for her.
Okay.
You can probably start to wrap though, Chris. If keep an eye on the time.
All right. Well, I just want to make sure that other people's time. I am just want to wrap it up. Want to say thanks for coming. If you have any follow-up questions, flick them to me or Andre, Brian. But I think we've started the conversation, and I think this has been a really good start to things that we did plan and work forward for. So, thanks for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you both for leading us in this
Stay on
process.
for a second. I'd love to just connect with you about Auckland for a second.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
All right, I'll
Thanks,
stop
everyone.
recording. Thanks, everybody.
Stop recording.